to Decolonize 2020 Global Youth Report. Now, we know it's not 2020 anymore, but these students worked hard from April to December on an 8-month learning and engagement project. And now they're reporting on their global report that synthesized all that amazing learning, action, engagement, art into one final report that they'd like to present here today to the world.
Absolutely. And it's not just a few youth. These are thousands upon thousands of youth who gathered from over 45 countries, representing 6 continents, representing geographical zones beside oceans, on top of mountains, within large cities, urban, rural. The world's youth have come together to create this, and today is a day to celebrate that work.
Wonderful. Now, before we get started, we want to acknowledge that we're joining you here from Canada, and there are people joining us from all over the world on all various different lands. And I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples and the lands that we are all on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to say how the importance of the lands that we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all First Nations people in Canada, the Inuit and Métis as well, and those that call all of our lands home.
Great. And so friends, what we're going to be doing today is sharing that first stage of the report. But this truly is a project that has been growing. I see our friend from Taking It Global, Liam O'Doherty, who was part of the team that actually joined us live. My goodness, it was 11 years ago in Copenhagen at COP15 when we were connecting from a side room and with you, doing incredible advocacy work and connecting them back to the world. And this project has grown from that all the way to where it is now, where we're connecting these thousands of youths and friends, especially for our honored guests, as well as everyone who is there. This is not just an opportunity to sit back and listen. Rather, this is an opportunity for us to move forward as partners. As they move out of this first stage in which they have created this paper, and we're going to have youth who will introduce the specifics on how they went about doing that. We are moving into a second stage of the journey in which they are going to take the paper that they have co-written and the recommendations they are bringing forward. We want you to listen as active participants to this whole group of young people distributed amongst 45 countries, and to look at yourselves as partners, potential partners, to mobilize this shared vision for local, national, and global global projects, as co-advocates for the voice of young people, and as global allies with whom you can connect, they can connect, and mobilize the power and energy of the tens of thousands of young people behind Decarbonize.
Wonderful. I would like to invite our first youth to unmute and start the global presentation.
Hello, my name is Reagan.
We can hear you, Reagan. It's
okay.
just
okay. I just wanted to make sure that my connection.
You're doing great.
Okay. This is the Decarbonize Global Youth Dialogue presentation, and we are the global lead students that worked on the editing and presentation of this paper. I am from Alaska, USA, and I'm representing both myself and my partner in the project. Unfortunately, she can't be here due to connection issues. We are both sophomores at Soldotna High School in Alaska, United States. And in our community, we experience climate change all around us, from fluctuating temperatures, wildfires, melting glaciers, and more. And so in response to this, our community has created a competition called Caring for the Kenai that challenges high school students to propose and implement solutions to environmental issues. This competition was how both myself and Brooke got interested in environmental issues, and it progressed into things like Decarbonize. Our journey, in our presentation today, you'll see a sample of some of the research and work of the youth of the world regarding climate issues. Decarbonize is the largest synthesis of youth under 18 research and action on climate change. Ahead of COP26, we are mobilizing to combat the repercussions of our changing environment. We, the youth you see presenting before you today, are only a minuscule fraction of the students who put effort into Decarbonize. It began with entire schools and communities participating in art, surveys, projects, global video conferencing events, and all sorts of interaction. And what's amazing about Decarbonize is that it doesn't end with us, but it's a continual cycle of interaction and learning that leads to local and global change. And it launches in April and Earth Day with individual and local projects. Decarbonize moves into the classroom in September, and in December, all of the work that we've done is condensed into the comprehensive Global Youth Report. Talanoa is a traditional word used in Fiji and across the Pacific to reflect a process of inclusive dialogue. The purpose of Talanoa is to share stories, build empathy, and to make wise decisions for the collective good. The process of Talanoa involves the sharing of ideas, skills, and experience through storytelling. During the process, we built trust and advanced our knowledge through empathy and understanding. Blaming others and making critical observations are inconsistent with building mutual trust and respect, and are therefore inconsistent with the Talanoa concept. Talanoa fosters stability and inclusiveness in dialogue, creating a safe space that embraces mutual respect on a platform of decision-making for a greater good. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Manuela. I'm a senior year student from Colégio Magno in São Paulo, Brazil. I'm going to briefly talk about who are we. First of all, to contextualize, I have been taking part in the project for 3 years now, and my school, an UNESCO associated institution, has developed a few interesting decarbonized projects in order to support this cause. One great initiative, for example, is the use of solar panels in order to provide most of the energy we use daily at school. Well, okay, so who are we? I must anticipate that this is not a simple question to be answered. We are really different from each other. We are thousands of youth from 43 countries and all of 6 continents in the world. We have different cultures, habits, lifestyles, but what makes us one huge group is the purpose we are all gathered here for, inspiring the leaders of the world to take action on the climate crisis we face. Taking it global and the Central for Global Education, in partnership with Oceanwise, Dragier Foundation, and under the moral patronage of UNESCO, provided us the opportunity to represent other youth, demanding wide changes from those who hold international recognition. During these 8 months, we were able to gather diverse perspectives, collect art and surveys of students from associated schools around the globe. Hours and hours of online collaboration allowed us to put our ideas into paper and now expose what we all believe could culminate into a better future. With that being said, answering the former question, we are Decolonize, Decarbonize.
Hi everyone, so we are Sofia Ramirez and Angela Garcia from Gimnasio Los Cabos, Bogotá, Colombia. So my name is Angela. I'm going to present a little part of our big journey. So first, we chose the class that we want to be in school. In our case, it would be PRAE, that we were making ecological projects. Second, we decided what project we want to create so we can implement in our school. It needs to be viable, had to be made by us, but also make an impact in school. It's important to stand out that in all this process, our teacher is guiding us. After, throughout the project, students from around the world work together on an online classroom. Decarbonize has a series of learning activities that we complete from September to December. In this first activity, we made videos to share information about ourselves, school, and communities, and the impact that we see from climate change. For the next learning activity, we calculate our carbon footprint in our home and school. Then we wrote blogs that talk about our learning and this process. Finally, we read blogs from other students in other countries to learn about energy used in other places and to better understand our use of energy compared to others. Here is an example of one of our blog posts. So here we talk basically about, like I mentioned before, our carbon footprint in our family and school. We made an analysis and then we put all this information in this text. Other students read and respond to our thoughts, ideas, or concerns.
Hi everybody, my name is Sofia. So here is another example of a blog written by a student in Costa Rica. One of the questions we were asked was, how does your carbon footprint reflect in the economy, the status, location, politics of our country? And it is interesting to think about our carbon footprint in this way. Students from around the world read our thoughts and ideas and then respond to them. For the month of October, we worked with a partner school to share the case study around the climate change. We learn about an issue in our country ourselves and then tell them to the students in our partner country. We learn about our country's targets under the Paris Agreement and how we were doing in our effort to meet them. All countries were paired with Global North and Global South partner. For example, we were paired with Russia, Japan was paired with India. Every country had at least one partner.
Hello, our names are Ana Maria Vera and Andrea Yepes. We go to Gimnasio Los Cabos in Bogota, Colombia, and we're going to continue talking about the process.
Well, I'm Ana Maria Vera, and I will talk about the continental meetings and the global meetings. In the continental meetings, we had a discussion about the 2020 importance because it is the 5th year since the Paris Agreement, the year when the countries must reevaluate their national determined contributions, and they also must update them with more ambitious targets, such as implementing renewable energies and strengthening the education system related to climate change. In this meeting, we also shared the current NDCs and the status of each one of them in our countries. Finally, we talked about the responsibilities of our continent versus other continents' responsibilities regarding climate change. After the continentals, we had the global meetings, in which we were focused on answering 10 individual main questions on regards of climate change. We used these questions and their answers to write 10 different essays by groups, developing the theme of each question. After the essays were partially done, we made different rounds of corrections, where collaboratively we made a feedback of each essay, and in the same way we complemented the ideas of each other. And here you can see a picture of a previous global meeting.
Then we worked on the global art gallery, Artists for Change. There are hundreds of pieces of art submitted to the global gallery. Here, people were able to express themselves and show to the world how they feel about climate change. And there are pieces of art from children as young as 4. Here we have some examples of the pieces of art from all around the world. Then we worked on the global lead writing. This was from December the 11th to the 14th, and 103 students representing 26 countries and 6 continents worked online for 96 hours, writing and collaborating in Google Docs and through Zoom. Finally, between January and February, 16 global lead youth refined the final report.
Hi everybody, my name is Raquel. I am from Alajuela, Costa Rica, and I go to St. Paul High School. And today I'm going to speak a little bit about action. So I think that one of the most important questions when it comes to action is, how do we turn our learning into action? And our answer to that is doing what we can with what we have. It can be big or small, but it is crucial to show the rest of the world our concern about the current climate issue. And it can be as small as changing daily life choices, like cutting out meat or using less water, to bigger things like participating in projects like Decarbonize. But what are some examples of action that we have done? So in Brazil, the students made a project to plant native trees from the Atlantic forest in a square next to their school to fight against deforestation. In Greece, Decarbonize students organized a shoreline cleanup on a beach in Crete. In India, Decarbonize students worked with their school to install solar panels. In Madagascar, the Decarbonize students had a biodigester built at their own school, and now they spend every Monday morning raising awareness and speaking to other students about climate change. And in Costa Rica, we had a green week in which we planted our own vegetable garden, and we also wrote blogs about sustainability. And of course, there are many other more examples, but sadly we couldn't fit them all. But it is incredible to see how youth have taken this knowledge and put it into action according to their country's own climate issue.
Hello, my name is Maja Cisowska. I am 16 years old and I am from Katowice, Poland, where I am attending Melchior Wańkowicz Private High School. The Decarbonize project has allowed me to meet, collaborate, and learn from youth from all over the world and expand my horizons on other issues and significant topics regarding climate change. One of these topics is meaningful participation. Meaningful youth participation is vital for the world because every citizen, disregarding the age, skin color, gender, or religion, has to be reached and equally encouraged and have the same possibilities to undertake climate actions. The concept of meaningful participation is more than simply being educated about basic science behind climate change. In order to achieve the meaningful participation, the youth needs to be provided with full, science-based, culturally integrated informations, and during the course of studying, the necessity is to implement project-based and experimental learning, which would later result in socially active youth. In reality, the small steps on everyday level lead to significant actions. Meaningful participation starts when young people are encouraged to initiate ideas and activities that are relevant to our lives and to draw on our knowledge and abilities. In order for our actions to work and to slow down the climate change, everyone has to be held accountable, because one of the biggest threats to climate action and advocacy is actually not meeting our commitments and targets. Therefore, all citizens must be held accountable and have and possibility to practice, which are going to impact our lives. This is what should be understood as meaningful participation.
Hello, my name is Ian, a 15-year-old 10th grader from St. Austin's Academy in Kenya. The government is a body through which society can aim for goals and hopefully succeed in doing so. At my school, we've taken part in protests in order to gain governmental recognition. In regard to the future of our planet, it is ample that a secure relationship with our government is established in order for progress to be achieved. Through the government taking accountability and noticing climate change as more than a passing phase, a better connection with the youth can be created through mutual interest. Unfortunately, us youth often have our ideas and abilities disregarded. Our voices need to be amplified, and creating these connections with the youth can do so, can make them heard, can inspire more youth, can encourage governmental bodies to work more towards ending the climate emergency. As with any endeavor, however, start small. Local action is often overlooked for being too diminutive of a change to make, when in reality, it shapes communities and societies to adapt for the fate that is the future. Local leaders should understand that environmental issues are just as important as the economic and financial challenges, especially as the environmental ones grow unquestionably untoward. It may be difficult to shift focuses, but it can be done when an understanding that actions performed now that are small will support people globally in the future. The future starts right now, doesn't it? The government has the capability to combat climate change. Undoubtedly, it should take interest in doing so. By meeting global goals and standards as a motive and creating a firm and committed interest in environmental issues, governments could easily achieve this. Primarily, taking these interests to heart directly can have grand influences on the way society and the youth view climate change. This can be done with governmental facilities such as schools or through businesses that the government can influence, such as the fossil fuel industry. Listening to youth and promoting advocacy also raises awareness. In the end, all these initiatives have an immediate effect to slowing the effects of climate change. How about the solutions? The idea of listening to people comes in again once more. New ideas and techniques are out there waiting to be heard, and the government has the ability to raise them to help create solutions. Ultimately, all these actions link to the government and can only be exploited by establishing a stable, steady, and wrapped governmental interest.
Hello, I'm Anisa. I'm from Dhaka, Bangladesh, and I go to a school called Zakar Nisa School and College. And Zakar Nisa plays a leading role in raising awareness about climate change in our country. I will be talking about the role of education in fighting climate change. Talking about education, we believe that it is the most important tool in breaking down climate change and mitigating the effects of it. Because learning about climate change can help us break down the fears that a lot of people have and break down these misconceptions as well. But on the other hand, not getting enough education about these can lead to the increase of climate anxiety, which stems from not knowing what to do when climate disasters hit your neighbors and you don't know how to save yourself. While on the other hand, climate denial is a phenomenon where a vast majority of the population live in denial of the existence of climate change, or don't feel like that their own actions are the reason behind climate change. So through education, we can actively give these people incentive to make sure that their actions are not causing harm to the environment and are protecting the environment instead. So we have to educate every single person on Earth because everyone plays a role in fighting climate change. But we have to emphasize on educating these specific actors and stakeholders because they have the most amount of power when it comes to fighting climate change. So how do we educate so many people in such a short amount of time? We have to ensure that we follow all of the best strategies that are in existence. These strategies include online and offline campaigns, and these online and offline campaigns have a lot of accessibility and power of engagement, which therefore can lead to the right conversations being instigated, and therefore the idea of hands-on action can be started. And by communicating to these people through traditional means of communication, such as articles in newspapers and magazines, can reach people from all over the world with different perspectives and backgrounds and give them reasons as to why they should live a carbon-free life and lessen their carbon emission, right? And most importantly, we have to ensure that we inspire people to go for hands-on actions, such as shoreline cleanups and all of the little things that one can do to minimize their carbon footprint. And we have to also ensure that everyone gets the basic understanding of the environment and what might affect it from a very small age so that everybody understands the environment and respects it and gives it the protection that it deserves.
Hi, our names are Nyla, Ella, and Piper. We are 8th graders at Bullis Charter School in Los Altos, and we represent both California and the United States.
Our school focuses on how each community is affected by the climate crisis, taking a Decarbonize initiative through educating our community, finding solutions, and transitioning that to our global knowledge.
Our school instills the importance of protecting the environment from a young age, such as our continued work with leatherback sea turtles involving the Leatherback Trust and a community in Costa Rica.
Youth supporting youth. During the rise of the climate movement, we as youth were urged to step up and take a stance because our future was being destroyed. As youth, we need to come together and support each other in our efforts to impact climate targets. We need global platforms and networks to celebrate the work we are doing so that other young people can read, learn, ask questions, and be inspired to make change in their own homes, schools, and cities. Not only do we need the tools to become inspired, but we need the support from the leaders of our world alongside becoming essential partners in order to provide and implement sustainable solutions.
Role models. Being a role model is acknowledging and championing the work that other youth are doing in their own countries. Young people should grow up knowing that their voices matter and that they can make change now. By showing other youth that they are not alone in this fight, we can inspire climate action and encourage positive change.
Youth action. Being role models means taking action to help others see the change they need to become. Some actionable steps we hold ourselves accountable to are participating in strikes and protests, using our voices and perspectives in policy, and implementing lifestyle changes. Youth must be provided with sturdy platforms and positions where we can actually instigate meaningful change, which usually only comes from positions of power that our global leaders hold.
Hi, my name is Neha, and I'm a 17-year-old attending Lacombe Composite High School in Lacombe, Alberta, and my school just started a garden project to reclaim the unused land nearby. We have the right to participate as equal stakeholders on matters which impact our lives. We youth need to be invited into programs and projects where we can make our voices heard. In an absence of government leadership, other institutions need to step up and amplify voices and actions for change. The leaders of today must inspire the people of tomorrow, leading by example. As youth, we rely on adults to make decisions. If the people responsible for the well-being of our earth are making uneducated decisions, what does that tell the young people who look up to them? Education systems have the power to tackle our lack of awareness regarding climate change. By educating more global citizens, we can ensure that all youth have the ability to spark conversations and ignite change. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of each country's government to educate its people on the environmental crisis. We, as youth, often do not have the financial or structural means to initiate our own solutions. We need other stakeholders to come beside us and provide tangible methods to reach these goals and pave the way for us to express our views. Support from governments and institutions has been invaluable in what we have already done and we want to continue creating change together. We believe that with the passion for long-term transformation in legislation, the power to fight for our environment, and active leadership to move us forward, making the earth a better place will no longer be just a slogan, but a truth that we live every day. I would like to extend a thank you to everyone who took the time to join us today, either via Zoom or the YouTube livestream, especially our distinguished panelists, honored guests, and of course, my fellow youth leaders from around the world. We greatly appreciate the time that you've taken out of your day or night to show your support for us. Thank you also to Sarah, Terry, and all the other educators and organizers out there encouraging and supporting youth taking action. We could not do it without all of you.
Brilliant work.
Oh my goodness.
You all did so well. That is incredible.
Just a wonderful job of sharing your thoughts and feelings and passions. I'm just so inspired every time I hear the youth on our project speak.
Amen. And we have some very special guests here who I'm sure have also been inspired by the amazing work of young people. Friends, we are going to open the microphone up to them to give us some feedback on the work that you have done, some inspiration. Again, for all of our guests who are here, we want to see this as an opportunity not just to listen to the youth, but to find opportunities for partnership with this army of young people who are ready to move forward in an educated and action-oriented perspective. So I'll introduce our guests who we have here today. We have James Gravert, who is the Director of Mitigation from the UNFCCC. We have Alexander Leicht, the Chief of Section of Education for Sustainable Development with UNESCO. We have Andrea Moody, who is Canada's National ACE focal point for the ECCC. And we have Isabelle Leverge-Chiasson, who's the National ASP.NET Coordinator at the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. So we'll pass the microphone over first to James, who is joining. James, where are you joining us in the world? Now, we didn't give our friends too much time in order to turn your microphones on and to share in the like. James, I see you there. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. Hi. I'll just say a few words. And first of all, thank you for sharing your insightful recommendations on the meaningful engagement of children and youth in climate action. Absolutely, this is so vital. There's no doubt that the climate change will directly impact the lives, the health, the rights, the development, employment opportunities available to young people in adverse ways, unless we immediately act to address this climate emergency. Today, as you all know, young people are more interested and engaged than ever in taking ambitious climate action and implementing innovative climate solutions. So youth are therefore valuable drivers and influencers of positive change, in addition to being the beneficiaries of these solutions. Your efforts that you're making here in this report, for example, and the efforts to remind the decision makers of the importance of youth engagement are so crucial to developing and implementing inclusive policies for a rapid and radical transition to low carbon, just, and climate resilient economies and societies. As you all rightly pointed out, that change often starts with changing and broadening the perspectives of those that have the power, that are in power. And it often starts locally. However, that changed mindsets we must translate it into action and greater ambition. We acknowledge that for any change to be sustainable, equitable, and just, all stakeholders must be meaningfully engaged. This includes children and youth, of course, whose voices are often not factored into decision making. And it is time we change that together. We have the solutions to deal with the climate emergency. Now we must act with integrity and urgency to put them in place. At the UNFCCC, we do work with the youth, and you can count on our support as you push for greater inclusion, representation, and incorporation of your youth voices in all the decision-making processes. So we're standing behind you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so very much, James. Thanks for the work that that you are doing, and for sharing your perspective on young people and the work that they're doing. We'd also like to welcome Alexander Like, the Chief of Section of Education for Sustainable Development. Alexander?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm just really adding my voice of appreciation for all what you have been doing. I think it's a truly impressive report and a truly impressive presentation that you did, and that also shows really the rich variety of work. It's very clear that young people are really the ones obviously most affected by climate change, because you are the future generation. You are the ones who have to really live with the consequences of climate change. But then also young people are the ones who very often have the most innovative solutions to climate change and to making pressure vis-a-vis governments. And I think your report is also making that very, very clear. As you know, as UNESCO, we work on education, on integrating climate change into education across the world, and against that background, I of course especially appreciated sort of the comments you made about education, about the importance of education, about the responsibility of governments really to take climate change seriously when developing their education system, when developing their curricula, to make sure that not only this group, but all young people across the world can really become change agents through education to address climate change. But of course, the school system can only do so much, and that's why that's another reason why your work is so important. Young people are very influenced not only by teachers, not only by adults, not only by their sort of the grown-up society about them, but really by peers. A lot of the change agents that are sort of created for climate change get inspired really by peers, by other young people, and this is why it's very important that you do this work, that you share this work further, that you mobilize other people. And equally important is really the strong pressure that you put on governments with regard to education, but also more widely to take their responsibility seriously with regard to addressing climate change. At UNESCO, in our program on education for sustainable development, we also have a large work stream of with regard to youth. We work with a number of youth platforms, youth networks, youth organizations, and one of the roles that we see for ourselves is really relay the voices of young people to governments. We work with our colleagues at UNFCCC and other UN agencies to do that around the COPs every year, but also in between the different meetings. So in that sense, also I really commit to continue working with young people and providing a platform so that your voice is heard also in the different processes that we are responsible for. So thank you very much for the impressive presentation and for your impressive work. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Alexander. And thank you so very much. UNESCO really is a core partner in the work that we're doing in the ASP.NET schools, engaging such a broad network of schools to participate in the program. We'd like to invite Andrea Moody, Canada's National ACE Focal Point for the ECCC. Andrea, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Hello from Ottawa, Canada, to my fellow panelists and to all of our wonderful presenters. I would also like to acknowledge that the land on which I'm attending this virtual meeting is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. I'm honored to be here today from Environment and Climate Change Canada as Canada's national focal point for action for climate empowerment, which is an item under the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change and the Paris Agreement that looks to empower all members of society to engage in climate action through 6 areas of work: education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to information, and international cooperation on these areas. I want to start by sincerely congratulating all of today's presenters, the youth who helped author the report, and all the youth who participated in this project. I'm 29 years old, so I fall into the last year of probably the most generous definition of the youth category, but I do remember what it was like not so long ago to be in shoes at least a little bit like yours. I remember when I started understanding what climate change was, when I started learning about it in school, understanding what it meant for the world and what it was going to mean for my home in Newfoundland, which is an island that's been very dependent on the beautiful ocean around it for natural resources like fish and oil. Climate change is such a big issue that I think sometimes it can make us feel powerless. But this kind of work, coming together to learn from each other and then using your voices to speak loudly about the changes you want to see, that's part of what pushes people to care and governments to act on all kinds of issues. I think that what you've done today and over the last 8 months, especially during a global pandemic, when everyone's normal has been turned upside down, is really quite extraordinary. So the Government of Canada knows that environment and climate change is a top priority for a lot of young Canadians, and that around the world, today's youth are going to be dealing with the impacts of climate change for a lot longer than their parents and their grandparents. We know that young people want to find creative and smart solutions to environmental challenges, promote sustainable practices and lifestyles, move to a green economy in ways that respect the rights and values of Indigenous peoples. And this project is proof of that you want to be and that you can be agents of change in your own lives and in your communities. There were a few points and ideas from your report and your presentation that really caught my attention. You talked about how local change is really key to fighting the climate crisis and the difference in experiences people have from person to person all the way up from country to country. This made me think back to the international work on action for climate empowerment and the Paris Agreement. So the coordination we're doing and the ideas we're sharing at that level are really important, but all my colleagues in that work around the world and I all know that so much of the action in ACE is really being pushed and done by local communities, by civil society, and by people like you. And those foundations are what's so important to connect and to build on. In Canada, I know we're hoping to do that through our Climate Action and Awareness Fund as one example, which came to mind because of all the amazing projects you all talked about participating in your schools and your communities. We had the Climate Action Fund previously that gave $3 million every year to support projects that increase engagement on climate change. Projects like Student Energy, which created a mentorship program for Indigenous students to help them build essential skills to cut pollution. But the exciting next step is that the Climate Action Fund is partnered with the Environmental Damages Fund to make the Climate Action and Awareness Fund. And that's going to give $206 million over 5 years to support all these kinds of projects. And actually one of the fund's main priorities is supporting youth climate awareness and community-based climate action. So just the kinds of projects you talk about in terms of meaningful participation and creating real change on the ground. In the Government of Canada and at Environment and Climate Change Canada, we're also working really hard to create opportunities for engagement in the policy process with young people across the country. In 2019, our Prime Minister announced our youth policy, which recognizes environment and climate change as one of the main priorities identified by Canadian youth. And at the international level, we've had youth delegates join Canada's official delegation to COPs, where they've had the opportunity to meet with our minister to talk about what their priorities are during international climate negotiations. So I think we've done a lot of work and we really see the importance of youth engagement, but what you've brought to the table today, what I'll be able to share with my colleagues in your report, shows us the new ideas and perspectives and helps us understand that the youth voice isn't a single voice and can't be treated that way, and that you're bringing different perspectives and ideas to the table. So again, I want to congratulate all of you for your work, and thank you so much for your presentation today.
Andrea, thank you so much for your feedback and for sharing. Now, before we go to Isabel, we do know that we only have James for a couple of more minutes before he needs to run. James, so I will forward one of the questions that our young people have brought forward, and they observed, and as we have observed, that there is often a place for youth who are considered 18 and older when it comes to these negotiations, but very seldom is there an active place for youth under 18. And James, in the negotiations that you're doing, what is the role and how do you see that changing moving forward, where youth under 18 in this most formative time in their lives can feel that they are active participants rather than just observers on the outside?
I wish I had an exact answer for you. I mean, it's a situation within the UN in terms of obviously working with people under the age of 18 in the arrangements that are necessary. We've had instances where people can participate if they're accompanied by their parents or by an appropriate guardian and things like that. But through the various platforms, and now that a lot of us are operating virtually through activities such as this, I think this engagement means and mechanisms is as powerful as trying to participate in an actual negotiation session. But that said, I do understand the need to find ways to engage the true youth, the really young, I say, not like people myself. And while our platforms are targeted largely at that older youth, of course, because of all the requirements, I do think it is something that we are continually looking into. But I would also encourage the youth here to reach out and to engage with those platforms, so they also can be a voice for you to get more action and get more representation in the formal processes, whether it be the Action for Climate Empowerment platform you were just hearing about from Andrea, or from our official UNGO constituency in the UNFCCC process. So that's what I would do. Reach out to the UN Youth Envoy, for example, and keep this issue on the table. That's what I could offer.
That's brilliant, and thank you, James. There was no preparation for that question in advance, so we apologize for trying to catch you on the spot. But thank you so much for joining us. And I do know that
no problem.
And I do know that you need to run. We'll quickly transition to next steps, and then we're going to jump back to questions, okay? Because it is important for the rest of our. So these are youth delegates, those who were speaking. Feel free to prepare some questions you might have for the other three panelists, and we will introduce Isabel here shortly. But before we do that, in order so James can see some of the next steps youth are doing, we'll go over to that now. Sarah?
So our next steps moving on from here, as was said by Reagan from Alaska at the beginning of our presentation, this isn't the end of our project. This is really, it's a cycle that continues on into the next year. The baton is being handed off in just 1 month's time as the next cohort of COP and Decarbonize Youth come together to start. So April 22nd on Earth Day, we'll be bringing everyone back together to celebrate the action projects that they've completed over the last few months since December, and hand off to the new cohort who will engage in the art projects and surveys and develop videos and stories and all the wonderful activities ahead of the classroom launch in September and the active engagement portions of the year. So we are looking forward to having a part two. As we all know, COVID really threw everyone in a loop. And so we've sort of shifted in that often usually our programs end with a presentation at COP. So the paper would be presented to the leaders of the planet there. But this year we've had to sort of shift to this online modality, and we've done it in a two-part. So this sets up part A, and starting in April, we'll launch part B, where the youth will use this as their framework as they move towards their new message that will be presented in Scotland. Well, hopefully we'll all be in Scotland in November.
And then as part of that, they want to take this framework that they have developed over this last year and really work at mobilizing their peers around the climate emergency that's there, mobilizing their governments around the action that they want to have taken, and then ultimately finding partners like who we have here and continuing to work with UNESCO, continuing to work with UNFCCC, continuing to work with their national governments as they engage a broad environment. These aren't just individual schools. These schools will reach out nationally using the frameworks they have developed over this last year to mobilize not just their schools, not just their cities, but to mobilize their entire nations. And so we reach out to the partners who are with us now and say, okay, how can we work together? How can we put some meat on the bones of what the youth have created and to continue this great and amazing work as we prepare to share the next steps in Scotland?
Now, I will, at the end, we'll end with a way for you to reach out and contact me directly or to contact our project more globally. Perhaps you know of a school that might also like to get involved in this project. So we'll share that just at the end as we're leaving. And as well, the paper that was shared with you all today in preparation for this event will be posted on our website. We'll be broadcasting that and sharing that with all of our students to get out into the hands of everyone in their communities.
Brilliant. So we have the last of our panelists, and sorry, Isabel, that we had to ask you for a little bit to wait, but we are ever so thankful that you were here for your vision to engage Canadian schools through the ASP network. Isabel, over to you.
Thanks. It's such an honor to be here. So hello, my name is Isabelle Laval-Chiasson, and I'm joining you from Ottawa, Canada, and I work with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, so one of the national commissions for UNESCO, and so pleased to be here. And I really want to start by saying a big thank you, merci, Talanoa, gracias for all of the work that you've done. It really inspires me, and particularly as we're in 2021, we are actually entering the decade of action for Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals. And what clearly was demonstrated in your presentation was how all of you are contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals through your action projects. And I think that's what we need to inspire everyone and citizens around the globe to realize that we're not actually going to achieve these Sustainable Development Goals without the participation of everyone, particularly youth, particularly communities at a community level. Some reflections from Canada as we're moving forward on climate action. A few things. We've been really focusing in Canada on Indigenous education and reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. And why I think this might be interesting for folks around the globe is that I think there's really something to be said about traditional knowledge and old ways of doing and our modernity and new ways of doing and how that can actually benefit all students and our society. I'm actually from the East Coast, also similar to Andrea from Nova Scotia, and there's actually an elder, Albert Marshall, who talks about this, about two-eyed seeing. So seeing from one eye from the past, acknowledging your history, and also acknowledging traditional ways of seeing and knowledge, and then one eye looking at the future and modernity, and also the use of technology like you're doing today, so that they're not necessarily in conflict, but how we're using both is so critically important if we're talking about the future of education and current educational systems. Another thing that's been going through my mind a lot these days is the Black Lives Movement, which has flourished across Canada, from the United States and globally, and anti-racism and education and inclusion. And why I'm bringing these topics up to the topic of climate change is because I think it's very interconnected. So when we're talking about targets for the SDGs, and actually my colleague Alexander from UNESCO really works on education for sustainable development, which is actually target 4.7. So you've all been working towards this actually through your actions. We're talking also about inclusive education and global citizenship education. So how can we make sure that everyone in our community can take action on climate change, and realizing that there's systemic barriers for people to not being able to take personal action on climate change. So that's where you've actually addressed that. You talked about policy levels. So we need to influence governments to change policies so that every citizen can really be engaged. So I was just so inspired by what you're doing, and I know you want some time for Q&A, so I'll leave it at that. But just thank you so much for all the hard work that you've done this past year. It's really inspiring.
Thank you so very much, Isabel, and thank you for joining us. All right, so we have some questions that young people have been generating and would like to ask. So we will open the floor up.
Well, first we want to see if any of our student representatives who were presenting today wanted to pose a question at our guests here that are captive in the room. I know that we have some wonderful students from around the world, and perhaps one of you, I'm trying to check my messages here to see all of the, sort it through.
We're having, it seems like a couple of technical challenges on the side. So if you are having trouble getting that, it was wonderful that we managed to make it through and to right around here. But we, if you want to type some of the questions you might have in the chat as well, we can make sure that we forward them to that. So while they are doing that, Alexander, I'd like to ask another one of the questions that the students have prepared around UNESCO and their mobilization around education for sustainable development. And we're going to follow up on that theme of engaging youth under 18 and some of the work that UNESCO has done on that type of work. And again, I apologize, I know that you're not an expert on this field, but what does UNESCO see as their role for engaging youth under 18 when it comes to the policy work that they are doing?
Of course, ideally, thank you for the question and for the challenging question, actually, because as you know, most of the work that we do is sort of with 18 plus, people 18 plus, but it is very, very important to include young people's voices into policy making. So one avenue we have, of course, is Isabel spoke about that, the UNESCO schools, the Associated Schools Project Network of UNESCO, which provides a platform for really also sometimes very young students' voices, primary, early secondary school voices, and we are compiling these voices and we are trying to relay them to policymakers. But of course it is, and I think that has also become clear through the presentation. It's very, very important to include these voices in policy making and make policy makers aware of these voices. Also, for example, to give another example of a concrete activity we're doing, we're having a global social media campaign at the moment. We call it Trash Hack, which is sort of around the issue of garbage, waste, and trash, and encouraging people to recycle. And that also targets partly very, very young people, really, and encourages them to do their work, to find their ideas about how to be creative about waste reduction, about recycling, about reusing. And then we have a big platform, and we are sharing this work of young people and these ideas of young people with policymakers in a very, very concrete way, that we assemble policymakers now at mid-May in a very large UNESCO conference, and we present this work among other work streams to them. So that's my response. But I think it's also very, very important to acknowledge, also for us to acknowledge that that's work that needs to be expanded, because as I said in my earlier intervention, it's really the young generation that has very often a lot of the innovations and solutions, but it's also the generation that is most affected by climate change.
Brilliant. Thank you so very much. And we are just so grateful for the amazing work that UNESCO is doing. As a former administrator at an ASP.NET school, I've seen the impact that it has, those programs and that outreach around education. And as you can see, the youth are ready to participate, more than just be educated, but want to take that education and put it into action. So Nyla, we have a question that's actually, Nyla's from the United States, yep. And it's echoing a question forwarded by some peers by Ian in Kenya. But Nyla, would you like to ask the question? And I think, Andrea, this might be best directed towards yourself. So Nyla, if you'd like to unmute and go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So my question is, how can we as young people become essential partners in this discussion? And, more specifically, how will you provide a platform and amplify our voices so that we can bring our solutions forward?
Thank you so much for the question, Nyla, and it's a great one. in terms of bringing, helping to bring your solutions forward and creating a platform, that's really something that Action for Climate Empowerment is seeking to do. It's been a great entry point when we look at the international space for young people to come in and engage on international climate issues, to have their views heard through, for instance, the Youngo constituency, which is a group of youth organizations who are admitted to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, to participate as observers. And as I mentioned, we're always looking for new avenues to continue to engage youth, to engage all of civil society, including youth, on, for instance, developing in Canada our new national framework, on developing our new climate target. As we know, this is such an important year for ambition. This year actually is a really big year for Action for Climate Empowerment, because we're looking at negotiating a new work program. So we've had one for the last 8 years, but this is a great year to get involved with civil society organizations who work on international climate change, to share your views and opinions and make sure they're heard, as we decide what the next steps are for that big item. And it is so big, when I talked about the 6 different work streams that are involved, it's such a big sprawling item when we talk about education, training, public access to information, public awareness, participation. That covers so many levels of government. We go all the way from international down to our communities. And it's a great space where we're really seeking to bring a more diverse and inclusive variety of voices to the table. Because as you said in your report, nobody knows your experience but you. And that brings a unique perspective in terms of what the solutions need to be in our communities, in our countries, and around the world. So I would really encourage all of you to, it's the part 2 of this process looks really exciting, and I'm keen to see where it goes next. And I would encourage all of you to see what avenues you can use to get involved with with civil society constituencies who have a way of bringing your voices together to speak more loudly to people in positions of power.
All right, well, friends, we have reached to the very top of the hour. Andrea, thank you for sharing that. And as you talk about that stage 2 engagement and that civil society engagement, we are super excited. Actually, it's under the government funding from the Canadian government and taking it global that we are going to be launching an app in which students can measure the carbon they're mitigating, in which they can map it, they can see what their peers are doing. And the kicker is although the Canadian government has helped provide the funding for this, it is going to be available. We're looking to have it available to the entire planet. And so we'll be able to see what youth are doing around the world. We'll be able to be inspired by their work. We'll be able to click down and learn about it. We'll be able to see how much carbon they've mitigated. And then in turn, we'll be able to see how much the whole world is coming together around young people, around under 18 youth, around school action, around education, around all this amazing work. So we're super excited to be rolling that out as part of this stage 2. And friends, all of the friends who are here, whether you're from UNESCO, whether you're from the Canadian government, whether you're from the UNFCCC, this is an opportunity. Hopefully you two have heard that the youth are looking and are ready and are educated to move forward in a partnership to help impact their local communities, their national communities, and ultimately the globe.
If anyone has any questions, would like further information, would like to reach out and offer partnerships in different countries, we have students around the world who, the Canadian government is very supportive of this work, but we have students who are located across the planet who need governments and organizations to come alongside them, help champion their local work in their local communities. If you think you can provide help in that role, please reach out to me or to the project directly. That we would love to have conversations on how we can partner and collaborate to really amplify the work and the voice of VCU. Thank you for joining everyone today. Thank you to our youth who did an amazing, inspiring presentation. I'm going to go watch it later on YouTube again, so I can really enjoy showing it. If you'd like to share a copy of this presentation, it'll be live on YouTube for, well, infinity, until YouTube is not popular anymore. And we'd love for you to share it with your colleagues, invite them to watch and really hear the message these youth had to say.
Now, before they go, we want everybody to unmute their microphone.
Yes,
and
this is something we do.
This was a cheer that was started actually by and led by our Kenyan contingent at the climate change conference last year. And this was at the protests. And how does it go again? It's a little complicated.
Decarbonize,
Decolonize, decarbonize, decolonize. Unmute.
Everyone.
Ready? Unmute your microphones. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Decarbonize.
Decarbonize, decarbonize.
Decarbonize.